pornography makes a person feel good because of the dopamine, the mental workings of our mind. So afterwards, they don't feel good. So what do they need to do again? View more pornography. And remember what we said, after a while, that's not enough. They have to up the game. And so I have another quote there. B is basically the same. I wanted to use it so you could see that. But notice the very end. It's no wonder that porn is addictive. It addicts people. Kids, people, adults cannot break away. Just like, have you ever known somebody that was talking about drinking or smoking or anything else, and they say, I can quit at any time, but they can't? Same way with pornography. Not only that, but what our view of reality and what is normal can be distorted through viewing pornography. Did you know that thanks to the process called neuroplasticity, our brains are constantly changing? When we engage in activity, particularly a pleasurable activity, and particularly when it involves repetition and intense focus, our brains alter themselves so that they'll be better and more efficient at doing the activity the next time. But the brain process can also be overwhelmed by what's referred to as supernormal stimulus, an exaggerated form of what's normal. Pornography, for example, can take our brain's natural stimulus, our desire for intimacy and connection, and make us and give us more quantity, more exaggerated, more supernatural versions of that desire. Through the neuroplastic process, porn can change what we perceive as normal, warp that which we find exciting, and make real intimacy seem less interesting by comparison. If you'll talk to somebody that has been involved in watching and viewing pornography for a lengthy amount of time, their relationship with their spouse can't bring satisfaction. I'm not talking about just sexual, but just there's no intimacy there because it's not what they've been. After watching that so much, their mind tells them this is what it's supposed to be like. Right up here, which is unreachable, which is unreasonable, which is fantasy. And so the real relationship between that husband and wife will never be satisfying. And so they look for someone else, and someone else, and someone else. I didn't realize it, but in Kentucky we have a law. The law is that you can only be married 5 times in Kentucky. 5 times. That blows my mind. But I actually know somebody that has been disqualified from getting married in Kentucky again because he's filled that up 5 times. First of all, I want to know what idiot woman wants to marry him after that. But that's another story. That's being videoed. But anyways. But do you see what's happened? He can't find that intimacy he's looking for. 5 different spouses. That's sad. But we're finding more and more of that. Also, there's emotional problems. Emotional problems, depression, irritability, loss of empathy, loss of trust, objectification, and stress. All this. Some people have, it actually produces stress, but also they use it as a means of finding an escape from stress. So it's a downward stress thing. For a moment, for a short period of time, they have less stress. But what is it going to do in the long run? It's going to cause more stress. And of course, obviously with all of these, and I've mentioned these, there is relationship problems. I mean, that's kind of the duh. I mean, obviously, if all these things, other things are going, we understand this, and this is more than just husband and wife. This is all relationships because of this, but especially that. Dozens of studies have repeatedly showed that porn consumers tend to have lower relationship satisfaction and lower relationship quality. Pornography increases the likelihood of divorce. It distorts a person's view of normal, biblical view of marital sex. Pornography removes sex from the context of marriage and uses words, images, thoughts to feed the desires of the flesh with a false promise of intimacy. Number 4, porn strikes at the heart of the user's wife. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Fireproof. Some of you may have, with Kirk Cameron. And that's what this was all about. Here's a man that is addicted to pornography. And what did that do to his marriage? It destroyed it because she knew what he was doing. How can there be an intimacy when there is this sense that there's someone else between you and your spouse? Obviously, I'm talking from a male point of view, but it can be the other way around too. We know that, but I'm talking from being a man, I guess. But we need to understand that this is something that violates the marital relationship that we have. I'll be honest with you, I've had a number of folks that I've talked to that divorce or at least marital problems have happened because it was discovered that the spouse was involved in pornography. Now, sadly, and I don't mean to do this, but when you look out at your crowd on Sunday, rest assured that there's a very good chance that there are some people there that this week viewed pornography. You say, no, not mine. I hope so. I hope that when I look at mine, there's none. But if the statistics are true and accurate, then there's a good chance. Now, with that being said, of course, I mentioned physical problems with that, and I didn't mention, actually, there's some other problems that can be physical difficulties related to viewing pornography, and we're seeing that in society today in some other areas. But how can we prevent it? I'm wanting to give you some. We have 20 minutes. No? What time is this over?
Next session starts at 3:15.
So I need to give you at least a few minutes between it. But let me mention some things. Try to be practical here, giving you some biblical basis, some practical basis. And so, first of all, we need to know and to teach the biblical principles of marriage and sex. I find it interesting that that's one of those things that we feel uncomfortable with. Preachers feel uncomfortable with talking about two things. Giving, because it makes us feel like we're being selfish to teach our people to give, right? And the second is on this issue. I remember going through our study, forced us to go through the book of Song of Solomon in our Sunday school. I was amazed at how many older men, red-faced, giddy, good men, but it made them feel uncomfortable reading some of that material. God's Word. I think sometimes we as pastors are afraid to extol not just marriage, but marital relationships. Who invented sex? Was it Satan? God did. Now, I understand that we have to be careful. I understand there's things that you cannot talk in a mixed audience. That's one of the reasons why I thought this is going to be a thing with ladies and men. So I wanted to be extremely careful here, and I hope I have been. But there's times when, of course, you have kids, and you don't want to have a message where afterwards the kids are going to their parents going, Mommy, Daddy, what does he talk? But we need to be talking and teaching them, don't we? Well, they'll figure it out. No, they're not. No, they're not. Remember, how did we learn how to parent? How did we learn marriage? From our parents, more than likely, of all things, right? So if we don't have a good example, just going to let them wing it? Or are we going to teach them so that their marriage is going to be strong? And that includes the physical relationship. I think here, that passage from 1 Timothy, or that should be, 2 Timothy, you can change that. 2 Timothy 3:16 and 17 is applicable. The Bible teaches the biblical view of sexuality. And so, should we teach that? Should we find out what the Bible says about it? Sure. And then, what should we do? I think we should, as doctrine for reproof, we need to point out what's wrong in our society. What we are allowing our kids, what we are allowing ourselves to view that is inappropriate, that is wrong. But then out of that, doctrine, reproof, correction, and then instruction in righteousness. We need to tell them what they need to be doing different. Sometimes maybe this was going to require having a men's meeting, ladies' meeting. There's nothing, didn't we just talk about that? About how the older women are supposed to teach the younger women? Well, I don't know. They'll figure out, no. We need to have godly older women that are from godly marriages teaching godly principles. And same with godly older men. Because a lot of guys are coming into marriage and they really don't know anything about it except there's a honeymoon. Sorry. Marriage more than a honeymoon? My wife, who I've been married 40 years now, we dated by mail. Not email, mail. Back and forth. She was at one college, I was at another. The longest we were ever with each other was a weekend, where I'd go to her parents or vice versa. When we got married, our honeymoon was longer than any time we'd ever been together. And then we get home and the real fun starts. Because now we've got to figure this thing on out. And I remember we had some real humdinger times at first. We were both Christians. We both loved the Lord. Our parents loved the Lord. But it was a battle. It was a struggle. We had to figure things out. We'd argue, and we made a promise we wouldn't go to bed until we wouldn't go to bed mad. The problem was we didn't have a TV at that time. We were in a little dinky building above a 2-stall garage. So one of us would be mad and go to bed, and the other would stay up. About 2 o'clock in the morning, come to bed. No, not going to. Not until we get this set real righteous. But what I'm saying is those things have to be worked out. We need to be teaching our folks, and we need to be honest. We talk in the pie in the sky. People don't live up here. They live here with problems and difficulties and temptations and lusts and all those things. And your church members and my church members are facing the same things. And so we need to be teaching them. I remember taking a class when I was at Tennessee Temple. Dr. Preston Phillips taught courtship and marriage. And I can still see him. He was the only teacher that ever began and closed the class in prayer. And he had these big, long fingers. And he'd go, I know this isn't spiritual, I peeked. He'd be praying. He says, Lord, thank you for and he'd have this hand going like this. And he's winding up. He says, our sexuality. And he used that term all the time. And I'm thinking, thank you, Lord, that our eyes are bowed. Because I was 19 years old, but you know what? He was trying to teach us some biblical principles of marriage. I thank God for that. But most of your people aren't at a Bible college. Teach them the Word of God. Teach them what it means to be married. Live before them that. We cannot ignore something that's so prevalent within society and in our homes. We cannot assume that people will figure it out. It has to be dealt with a biblical, honest way. The home should be a place of safety and purity. This requires parents to practice personal holiness in what they watch and what is allowed to be watched. My dad, even before I was saved, my real dad died before I was born. And my stepdad was an awesome dad. I mean, I love him to death. But even before they were saved, and then afterwards, it was his view that he would never watch anything on TV that he couldn't let me watch. Now, I appreciate that to this day. Now, that was back in the day. I want you to think about it. That was back in the 1970s. Half of you weren't born then. That makes me old. And all you had was 3 channels. You didn't even have TBS and WGN and all that. You had ABC, CBS, and NBC. That's it. And everything that they had then is mild. But he set a standard for me as a father. And I appreciated that. Talk personally and pointedly to your children. I still remember my dad talking to me about the facts of life. I mean, that's one of those things that burns into your mind when you're a young kid. But I'm thankful because I have a lot of friends that they found it out at school or from someone else. My father taught me those things. You need to do the same. Don't figure that they're going to figure it out somewhere else. Don't expect a youth pastor to do it. It's your job to teach your kids this important. I mean, this is an important thing. Remember what we said? False religion always has sexual immorality involved in it, and the culture we were talking about. So what are we needing to do? Is this going to be part of their life in some way, shape, or form? Sure it is. Sexuality will be part of their life. Who should be determining what that looks like? Us. We should be teaching them. And so talk personally and pointedly. Now, obviously, I have grandchildren from 8 down to 3. There are things that still are not appropriate for any of them, But as time goes on, they should be age-appropriate information, especially in today's society, also with not just pornography, but all the other things that happen sexually. And, our children are having to learn about homosexuality. Well, my wife, something came on up, and my wife took the opportunity to explain to them about those things. And we were so pleased that my granddaughter responded by saying, yes, even in those wildlife, animals know the difference between boys and girls. Where did they learn that? Their mommy and daddy are already teaching them some principles age appropriate. And so we need to do that. That brings us to a couple other things. Have computers in public places and control their use of social media and the time allowed. It is wrong to just give them free reign on that. It just is. F, above all, as preachers, we must be committed to moral purity personally. I'll tell you something. It affects preachers just like anybody else. I've known pastors that have been affected by it. And so we need to be very careful about this in our lives, because do you think that will hurt your ministry? How can it not? You have to be pure. With that being said, I have below several filters that can be used. Now, some of these are for children. Some of these are for adults. For instance, I had a young man that was struggling with this, and he came to me and said, I'm having a problem. I need accountability. I appreciate that. And so what it was is it was a reporting place. Every week I got a report what was going on. Now what that did was he knew that I was going to find out what he saw on the internet. So do you think that helped him? Sure. You say, oh, we don't need that. Well, sometimes we need to just give a little bit extra help to them. I would love to say it's just enough to teach them the Bible and they're going to do it and that's all right. But we need accountability sometimes. Some of these are where you can block websites or certain kinds of things. Others are things that give them control over multiple things. For instance, some of them you can block out pornography, you can block out this kind of thing and that kind of thing. Plus, you can limit the time. Plus, you can, so in other words, it's all around. Some of these are free. Many of them cost. And so I put a little bit about each one of them on here, and I gave you. Some of these are Christian-based. Some of these are just simply not Christian, okay? But they understand the danger of pornography, so they offer this service. So I hope that you will look at these and use one for your children. You say, I trust my children. I don't trust the devil. Okay, that's who I don't trust. And in this society, I want to make sure my grandchildren now stay pure.